Hi, everyone. My name is Christian Triantaphyllis. I'm a partner and U.S. immigration attorney at Jackson Walker, LLP. We're a full-service law firm with over 400 attorneys across 7 offices in the United States. I run the investment immigration practice, where we work on a number of different types of investor visa cases on a daily basis. I've been working on investor visa cases for nearly a decade, and I've worked with foreign nationals from around the world, whether it be through investor visas or EB-5 petitions to gain green cards. Today, I'd like to speak with you about various options that remain viable under today's enhanced and tough immigration system in the United States. Over the last several months, I've noticed an increased demand and interest and opportunity to come to the US based on COVID-19 being a global pandemic across the world, and financial issues that are growing as a result in various countries around the world. So if you'd like to immigrate to the US, and you're interested in being an entrepreneur or starting a new company or acquiring an existing company, or even investing in the US to create jobs for American workers in order to become a green card holder, my presentation should be of interest to you because, again, these do remain as viable options to come to the United States. Thank you. Okay. Today we'll be discussing navigating the US investment immigration under today's immigration climate and COVID-19. Just a little bit more about myself. I'm the investment immigration chair at Jackson Walker. Of course, we are a full-service law firm. I'm based in our Houston office, where I work with a handful of attorneys and paralegals on all things immigration. I've been recognized as a top 25 immigration attorney for the last 3 years. Before that, as a top 5 rising star in the field of EB-5 immigration. I'm also an expert panelist with the American Immigration Lawyers Association for several years now, and I'm a frequent writer and speaker on investment immigration topics. So today, as we're going to be talking about how to navigate the immigration system under COVID-19 and other immigration bans that have been put into place, I first thought it would be helpful to go over the different types of visas versus immigrant processes. So as an entrepreneur, as someone interested in investing in the US, I've highlighted those relevant visa types and immigrant process types that would be of interest to you. So in our blue shaded rectangle, we've got the non-visa types. Those are your visas where you can think about coming over to the US as a visitor or a student, maybe someone studying in a training program, or even as a specialized worker under H-1B. But the visa types that I'd like to focus on in terms of being an investor are those visa types labeled as E1, E2, L1. Those are visa types that you can make investments, acquire businesses, basically take the immigration process into your own hands in order to get to the United States sooner rather than later. Now, those are non-immigrant visas. So those are more of a short-term solution on getting to the US. It also means you're coming to the US for a very distinct purpose. You're going to be working with that company or managing that specific business that you've set up and invested in. Now, on the right side, we've got immigrant processes. These are processes to become a green card holder, a lawful permanent resident in the United States. Now, I've put in bold the 2 processes that I'd like to speak about today. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner or investor, you can use to become a green card holder and move to the United States on a long-term basis. That's EB-1, and specifically there's a subcategory called EB-1C, and EB-5, which is your investment visa process to become a green card holder. Now, I thought I'd start out by explaining what's gone on thus far in terms of temporary immigration bans in the United States. On April 23rd of this year, there was a temporary suspension put in place for 60 days in which immigrant visas would be stopped from being issued at U.S. consulates around the world. However, the good news is there are some exceptions to this immigration ban. Now, one of the key exceptions that I wanted to point out is that the EB-5 Immigrant Investor Program is an exception to the immigration ban. That means that if you qualify under the EB-5 program to be granted an immigrant visa at a U.S. consulate, you can still get this visa. You can still move to the United States under the EB-5 program during the time of this immigration ban. In addition, this immigration ban did not include non-immigrant visas. So again, I'll go back to our slide before. That all the list on the left side of the non-immigrant visas are exempt from that immigration ban. So if you could take advantage of one of those visa processes, such as the E2 or E1 or L1, you could move to the United States much quicker and at the same time take advantage of one of those immigrant processes based on making an investment or acquiring a business in the US. There are also some country-specific immigration bans in place. Two countries that come to mind are Iran and Nigeria. There are also exceptions or waivers that can be used to get around these bans. Waivers that show your ties to the United States. So let's say you have a family member or you have an investment interest. If you can demonstrate that would be a hardship to that U.S. Partner of yours, and you can demonstrate the need for you to get to the U.S. immediately based off those ties to the U.S., such a waiver can be approved. Another way we've been able to navigate these immigration bans is for those foreign nationals who are from countries that are currently experiencing a country-specific immigration ban, by acquiring a second passport, such as Grenada or Turkey or others that offer quick passport solutions, you can actually get to the US even though you may be from a country that is experiencing an immigration ban, but you can get to the US by using this second passport that you've acquired. And these are processes that I have experience in handling and would be glad to speak with you on a case-by-case basis about it. In addition, we should address the fact that COVID-19 has brought up a number of issues in our immigration system. And that is specifically dealing with the U.S. embassies and consulates around the world. I've written in sort of a timeline as what we've seen the U.S. embassies and consulates go through since March of 2020, in which they started closing down visa processes, visa appointments, and limiting any kind of visa issuances to foreign nationals in order to get into the U.S. However, as of late, we've started to see immigration start to pick back up on face-to-face interviews. You can also track via the website I've provided through the Department of State which consulates are now unrolling or rolling out their visa appointments again. We start to see some countries in Asia do this. Now, one of the key points is that during the closures of the U.S. embassies and consulates around the world, you can still start your process for one of these non-immigrant visas, such as L1, or your process for a green card to start immigrating to the U.S., such as EB-1 or EB-5, by filing your petition with USCIS. Those processes have not stopped. USCIS officers are still working. They're still accepting cases and processing cases. During COVID-19, during these embassy closures, I've had petitions approved, and we go to the next step of starting to set up visa appointments at different US embassies and consulates around the world. And now we have to wait for them to reopen in order to get the visa appointments. But if your interest is now, in terms of getting to the US, now would be the time to start the process, because we know that USCIS will indeed process your petition. Now let's dive into what the different visa types look like in order to take advantage of being an investor in the US. So the E2 investment visa has really grown in popularity over the last year or so, as more and more countries have been educated about this process, and more foreign nationals have decided they need a quick way to get to the United States. Now this involves being a passport holder, being from a country that has an E2 treaty with the United States. So the first thing to check is whether you are from a country that is on the long list of E2 treaty countries with the US. Then make an investment in a US company in which you will own 50% or more of that US company. You could own 100% of that US company. This could be a new business where we're starting up from the very beginning, where we're including a business plan on your 5 years of growth. We're going to show that you've secured an office lease. We're going to show that you've opened a bank account and we've formed the entity, we've formed the actual company. You could also acquire an existing business rather than do a startup business. You could acquire a business that has had years of history, and in that application will show the years of employees and operations through invoices, contracts, payroll evidence, to demonstrate that to the US immigration authorities that this is an existing business in which you've helped capitalize to grow further or own, and you're going to come into the US and run it as an executive in the United States. Now, one thing I'd like to point out is that the investment amount is not a set investment amount. It needs to be a substantial amount that is significant to the business. That can vary depending on what type of business you decide to start up or acquire in the US. Whether it be $100,000 or $300,000 really can depend on the type of business that you're taking on in the US. Now, that visa that you can get based off this investment, the length of time that it's valid is going to vary depending on what country you're from and what sort of reciprocity table you have with the United States. That just means your E2 visa may be valid for 1 year, it may be valid for 5 years, depending on what country you're from. When you're into the country, your spouse and unmarried children under the age of 21 years old can accompany you, and they can get their E2 visas, come to the United States, return to their home country, and return to the United States freely. Now, at Jackson Walker, as a full-service law firm, we assist clients with the formation of the U.S. company, with drafting the company agreement, with acquiring the tax identification number, and we do the full service of immigration processes that the E2 visa takes. So we're a full-service, one-stop shop for this type of visa process. The next visa option that I'd like to touch on is the E1 Treaty Trader visa option. This is similar to the E2 visa option that I just discussed, in the sense that you have to look at whether your foreign national, The next visa option that we'll discuss is the E1 Treaty Trader visa option. This is similar to the E2 visa option in that you have to have a treaty with the United States in order to qualify for the E1. Now, the E1 does not depend on making a significant investment in the US. Rather, it depends on whether the business that you own in the United States does significant trade or services with your home country. For example, a foreign national from Greece qualifies for an E1 treaty trader visa so long as he or she owns 50% or more of a business in the United States that conducts the majority of its trade or services with countries or individuals back in Greece. And through a series of documentation, we can demonstrate that, and that individual can move to the US with their E1 visa. Now, the L1 visa is another interesting visa option that oftentimes involves business owners, entrepreneurs who are setting up new companies in the United States or acquiring existing businesses in the United States. Now, this visa option requires that the individual who's going to come to the United States has worked with the affiliate company abroad, meaning in the foreign country, whether it be in India or Russia, and has worked there for one of the last 3 years before submitting the L1 petition. Now, typically that individual is going to have served in an executive or managerial role. There is also such thing called specialized knowledge under the L1 category. And that individual continued to fulfill a similar role in the United States business, either as an executive manager or someone with specialized knowledge. Now, the length of that visa can depend on whether it's going to be served in an executive role or specialized knowledge role. But typically, if an executive or manager comes to the US, that L1 visa can be extended for up to 7 years. Now, one of the great things about the L1 visa, if you come over to the US as a manager and executive, there's a very similar green card process that we could take advantage of. And I'll touch on that later in this presentation. Here we see the L1 visa new office is a chart to help further depict how one can take advantage of this option. So if someone starts up a new company and has worked abroad for one of the last 3 years for a company that's affiliated with the new US company, and so long as we show that after 1 year, we're going to have employees and operations as part of that US company, we can successfully bring you over in a matter of months or even weeks to move to the US as an L1 visa holder. Now, again, at a full service law firm such as Jackson Walker, we can assist you with forming the new business. We can assist you with acquiring an existing business to take advantage of the L1 immigration process. Now, in order to qualify for the L1A visa option, we do have to show that the foreign company and US company are affiliates. To do that, you can have several different ownership criteria met. One is one single individual who owns 51% or more of the foreign company and the US company. There we have demonstrated that the foreign company and US company are affiliates through the individual's majority ownership of both. In addition, you could have the foreign company owning 51% or more of the US company, or the other way around, where the US company owns 51% or more of the foreign company. Also, sometimes we have foreign companies that have multiple owners, 3 or 4 owners that have a certain percentage ownership of the company. And we have the same set of owners with the same set of percentage ownership own the US company. And through that method, we can also help an individual or several individuals qualify for the L1 visa option. The E1, E2, L1 offers great benefits to the investor's family as well. Investor's spouse and unmarried children can move to the United States off of a dependent visa and live and study with the principal worker or principal investor. In addition, the spouse of the E or L1 visa holder can get a work permit and work wherever they'd like to in the United States for whomever. in addition, including themselves, which is a great advantage for the spouse. Now, we've gone over some visa options. These are non-immigrant visa options. But one thing I'd like to point out, as a visa, these are short-term, temporary options that are eventually going to run its course or are going to tie you to being in the US for a specific reason. Meaning, as an L1 visa holder, you can only be in the US as part of that company that you petitioned through, and it maxes out at 7 years if you are in the US as an L1 executive. Or if you're an E2 visa holder, while you can renew that visa again and again, you are specifically in the United States to be with that company. In addition, if your children turn the age of 21, they are now no longer able to be a dependent on your visa. Therefore, we really also need to touch on the benefits of becoming a green card holder, which means going through one of those immigrant processes, either EB-1 or EB-5 as a business person, entrepreneur, that I touched on early on in my presentation. So what are the benefits of becoming a green card holder rather than being a visa holder? Green card offers the petitioner and his or her family the right to live and work in the US. They can live anywhere they'd like to in the US. They're not necessarily tied to a specific employer or a specific geographic location. It also allows people to take advantage of the US education system and not be considered as international students. You can retire as a green card holder. You can have access to certain healthcare and other government programs. And in the end, being a lawful permanent resident has a lot more assurance and status in the United States that can lead to becoming US citizen if you choose to do so. It also locks in your children's ability to sort of set their own destiny in the United States. They can turn 21 years of age or older and still hold on to the green card that they have acquired as a dependent through their parents' immigration process. So that's another huge advantage of going through an immigrant process to becoming a green card holder while your children are below the age of 21. Now, the EB-1C option for green card is one that I see people who own businesses abroad who decide to acquire a business in the United States, a significant business with significant employees and operations, or they've started the business from scratch in the US through an L1A new office that I discussed earlier, and they've been able to grow this business to be big enough to support an EB-1C immigrant process. Just the same as the L1, this requires that common ownership that I discussed earlier for the L1. But it needs to be a business that has been in existence for at least 1 year in order to support the EB-1C option. I'd also like to see at least 10 to 15 employees and the business operating in a profit state in order to demonstrate that it can support and pay the wage of the EB-1C petitioner. But this is oftentimes a great option for somebody who runs a very large company abroad and may want to set up a branch office in the United States in the same line of business or similar line of business, and continue doing so in order to grow the company in the US. And this can result in becoming a green card holder with your immediate family members. Now, there are some backlogs, meaning there are some delays under this process for certain foreign nationals, but the majority of foreign nationals out there are not going to experience a backlog through the EB-1C process. It does take time, though. These petitions don't get approved overnight. It may take 6 to 9 months or so to get an adjudication on this EB-1C petition. But if you're in the US already through your L1A visa, you can wait that time for the petition to be approved here in the US. And once approved, you can then just adjust your status, meaning convert from non-immigrant visa holder to becoming a green card holder. And again, I've got lots of experience assisting clients with acquiring a business in the US or forming the new business in the United States. And after 1 year or so, the business becomes strong enough to then file the immigration petition to help qualify for the green card in the long run. Okay, so another option that we need to discuss is the EB-5 green card option. This is the option for the true investor, somebody who is interested in investing in a business in the United States to create new jobs. Now, this program was set up in 1990 and was set up for either a direct EB-5 option or a regional center EB-5 option. Now, the program really took off in popularity about 10 years ago or so and remains popular to this day. Now, the investment amount is $1.8 million in order to qualify under the EB-5 program, and you're going to make this investment into what's called a new commercial entity. Now, the investment amount can be reduced to $900,000 if the new commercial entity or the business, the project in which you're investing in, is located in a targeted employment area. The targeted employment area, or a TEA, is based on the business being in a rural area that's under 20,000 people, or a high unemployment area, which can be qualified based on putting together a few census tracts in the United States. Now, as a result of the $900,000 investment, for example, there need to be 10 new jobs created for American workers. And we'll get into later about what those jobs should look like. Now, another aspect of the EB-5 program is that the investment funds need to come from a lawful source. And again, I'll talk about that in more detail as well. Who can immigrate with the investor? Well, the spouse and unmarried children under the age of 21 can accompany the investor to the US, and each individual is going to get their own green card based on one single investment. So again, source of investment funds is a very important aspect of the EB-5 program. So I've worked with foreign nationals from all around the world with all different types of investment fund scenarios. Some may have gotten their funds from salary, an income earned through their employment. Others through sale of assets such as property or businesses. Others receive loans, whether it be loans based off of ownership of property or personal loans from friends or family. Shareholders loans is another common loan scenario that I work on. Another common scenario is gifts from family members or friends, where perhaps a younger investor, maybe a 20-year-old, 21-year-old investor has received a gift from his or her parents and makes the investment to immigrate under EB-5, under the EB-5 program. But again, I'd be happy to speak with you on a case-by-case basis to understand what it means to put together a source of funds scenario, source of funds documentation that works for the EB-5 program. Now, here's what a sample direct EB-5 project would look like. This is an example of an investor investing $900,000 or $1.8 million, depending on whether the business is located in a targeted employment area, into a U.S. company. And that U.S. company is going to use that money to develop business operations and employees over time. Now, that needs to be at least 10 jobs created over time. And what I mean by over time is you don't have to show immediately that the 10 jobs have been created. Over time, you're going to create those 10 jobs. So perhaps 1 or 2 after the first year, 3, 4, 5, and so on until you get to 10 jobs under a time frame of anywhere from 3 to 5 years or so. Now, those jobs under the direct program need to be directly employed by the U.S. company. We call these W-2 workers, and they need to be working 35 hours a week. Now, some might find it difficult to set up a business that can create that type of job creation. So other investors will invest in the regional center EB-5 program to get their green card. Now, this happens to be the more popular way of using the EB-5 program. Here we have a $900,000 or $1.8 million investment into an EB-5 limited partnership or an LLC, for example, that's managed by a regional center. A regional center is just a group or an individual who has gotten a license from U.S. Immigration to manage funds on behalf of EB-5 investors to get green cards. Now, those funds, those investment funds, will be invested into a project, typically either via loan or equity investment. And that project is going to create whatever it creates. Is going to develop a hotel, a high-rise condominium building, a restaurant, amusement park, whatever it is. And as a result, 10 new jobs are going to be created for each one of those EB-5 investors in the partnership. Now, the great advantage of this model is because it's affiliated with a regional center, we get credit, you as the investor gets credit for indirect job creation. That's not just those direct employees with the company, it's indirect job creation. Those are jobs that are created all around the project as a result of all of these investment funds going into the location, going into this business. So we're going to get a much larger number of job creation, which results in a much more assurance and cautious approach for the investor in terms of getting their green card. Now, this timeline demonstrates what it looks like to go through the EB-5 process. As again, I mentioned we're going to prepare the source of funds report, where the investment funds come from. We're going to demonstrate what the project consists of, what the business is going to do with those funds. And we're going to file the I-526 petition. That's the petition that says, I would like to immigrate to the US based on making my $900,000 investment into this business. Now, eventually that petition is approved. Timelines have been all over the place. I'll get into that shortly. But once the I-526 petition is approved, if the investor is abroad, meaning not in the US, we would run them through the US consulate or embassy to get their immigrant visa and come into the United States as a green card holder. If the investor is in the US when the petition is approved, we'll file an adjustment of status application. Perhaps you're in the US with your E2 visa or your L1 visa or your E1 visa. Well, if your I-526 petition is approved, because you're also going through the EB-5 process, we can convert you from a visa holder to a green card holder. That green card will be valid for 2 years. And at the 2-year mark, we're filing the last petition of the process, the I-829 petition, to remove the conditions of the green card by showing that you created those 10 new jobs. And by doing so, your I-829 petition is approved, you're done with the EB-5 process, you've got your green card, and you can go on and apply for citizenship if you qualify and choose to do so. So that's the EB-5 process in a nutshell. Now, EB-5 processing time, this has always been a lightning rod issue when working with investor clients. How fast will my EB-5 petition be approved? And can I be in the United States based on making my investment? Well, when I first started out in this business, we could get petitions approved in anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months. And investors would be so happy and be going to the US Embassy and entering the US in a matter of a few months after that. Well, as the program grew in popularity, processing times grew as well to 2 to 3 years for I-526 petitions. Many I-526 petitions were filed from investors in China. USCIS recently changed its form of processing, the way it's going to process EB-5 petitions. Instead of first in, first out method, meaning the person who files first should get their petition approved first, in which we had many investors from around the world lined up behind investors from China, because remember, they were using so many of these, they were a frequent filer of the EB-5 petitions. Instead, they're going to do a first in by visa availability method, meaning if you're an individual from a backlogged country, a country that's now backlogged under the EB-5 program, you're going to be moved to the back of the processing line until you're no longer considered to be backlogged. So that moves investors from China to the back of the line and the rest of the world to the front of the line, where we're going to see investors from the Middle East, from Russia, from Europe, from Africa be processed much faster, perhaps more along the lines of 12 to 24 months than investors from China. So that's going to be a very good outcome for the EB-5 program in 2020 and beyond. Now, I always tell clients who are thinking about the EB-5 program that the EB-5 program can be one of the most predictable ways to wind up as a green card holder, as a lawful permanent resident for you and your family, so long as you're working with an experienced immigration attorney, such as myself, and you're working with a business in the US that you either know how to manage, or you're investing with a group that has experience in investing EB-5 investors' funds. Again, I've worked with individuals from all around the world, many from Africa, many from the Middle East, many from Asia, and each case is specific to its own facts and interests in what that individual wants to do. So if you're an individual, you're an investor who wants to come in and start your own business and grow it from the ground up and create 10 new jobs on your own, we can form and create an EB-5 program, an EB-5 petition that works well for you. If you're an investor who has your own company and your own affairs to take care of abroad in your home country, but you want to invest in a business that creates jobs on your behalf, then we can create an EB-5 petition in which you're investing with a group that will create the 10 jobs on your behalf. We can file that type of petition for you as well. That's a much more hands-off, passive investment, turnkey solution, where we're filing your petition and the jobs will still be created based on your $900,000 investment. But again, it takes working with an experienced group, an experienced immigration attorney such as myself, and I'd be happy to do that with you. Thank you, and feel free to contact me using the contact information listed here on this slide or through BLS as well. Bye-bye. All right, well, hello everybody. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I'm here and available to answer any questions that you might have about the status of the immigration programs in the US and anything else that may have come to mind while reviewing the webinar. I want to provide a few more clarifications about what's going on in the US today in terms of the immigration system. Some of the options that I discussed today are experiencing a temporary suspension, including the EB-1C and also the L-1 visa. However, that doesn't prevent somebody from taking advantage of another visa option that I discussed, such as E2 or E1, or even entering the United States with a visa that you might already have in your passport. And from there, you can do an adjustment of status or change of status to something like an L1 or even an EB-1C if you can qualify. So there are ways to navigate some of the recent developments. The good thing is E2 and EB-5 remain exempt, are an exception to any kind of suspension of immigration or any kind of restriction. So those two categories really remain in favor. And I think, for obvious reasons, it involves investment in the US, it involves the creation of jobs in the United States. And so it's looked at very favorably right now in the United States and by the US immigration system. I work with clients every day on those types of matters, and we're seeing approvals even through the closures at the U.S. consulates at COVID-19. Due to COVID-19, we're still seeing approvals that are happening through USCIS. So one of the questions I see are, how do we know, with Trump's announcement, how do we know that the E2 or EB-5 doesn't get scrapped? Well, again, these announcements have spelled out clearly which programs are getting suspended through 2020. So that's what they are. They're temporary suspensions through the end of the year. And thus far, and you know, it's written in the proclamations, E2 and EB-5 are not touched by these proclamations. You know, there's some history with EB-5 and the Trump family, and I think that is ringing true here, or showing itself in the sense that EB-5 continues to be unaffected by these proclamations. So someone asked, when is the processing commencing? Well, anytime we're going to be moving forward with a process for you, whether it be E2 or EB-5, we're going to need to show that the investment has been made in the U.S. business. So that's a question I get a lot. Do we file before the investment or after the investment? Well, we're going to file after the investment is made, and you're going to spend the money before you have your immigrant visa or your E2 visa typically. So the money will be spent on the development of the business by then. But that's okay, because by the time you're at your interview and speaking with the person at the U.S. consulate or USCIS is looking at it, that's good to show that the business is up and running and operating based off of the investment. Someone here who lives in Ghana and is considering starting a branch in the U.S., which approach will be best for you and what's the cost involved? Okay, so, you know, if you have by saying you're going to start a branch office in the U.S., that entails that you have a business in Ghana. And so typically an option for you would be pursuing the L1 visa. And again, the L1 visa, which is temporarily suspended by the Department of State, meaning at the U.S. consulate right now, they're not issuing those. However, the good thing is we can still file your petition. You can still file your L1 petition with USCIS here in the U.S. When it's approved, we would then line up your visa appointment at the consulate, and by then, perhaps if it's by the end of the year, we'll see the expiration of the temporary immigration ban on L1, and you can come into the U.S. with that new L1 visa. Why would the L1 be an option for you? Well, again, the L1 involves an intra-company transfer. This is when you have a business abroad and you're able to form a branch office in the United States in which you will come over and be an executive for. However, if you're looking at green card options, if you're looking to become a lawful permanent resident under this scenario, while there's a very similar option called EB-1C that I discussed, that usually in terms of very similar option that looks like the L1 in terms of being an intra-company transfer, that business is going to have to grow quite large and in the U.S. And that might happen, but we can also look into how much money you're investing in the U.S. to start up that business. If it happens to be enough money that you're investing, we could potentially file for your lawful permanent residency under the EB-5 program. So you're welcome to contact me with more details about what you plan on doing, but there could be some options out there for you to make this happen. All right, we've got a question about EB-5. In what timeline can we get back our investment? Is there any assurance to get our investment back? Great question. All right, so under the EB-5 program, once you make your investment into the business and we file that first petition of the process, your investment needs to be at risk with the project, meaning the project needs to be spending the money and have used the money throughout your EB-5 process up to the point that you're filing the I-829 petition to convert from the 2-year green card to the permanent green card. So once you file that last petition, you don't have to wait to get it approved to get the money to get your investment funds back. So how long is it going to take to get to that last petition? Well, it can vary. It really depends on how fast the I-526 petition is approved, the first petition. Well, let's say it takes 18 months, or let's just for easier numbers, let's say it takes 20 months and then another 4 months or so to get to the U.S. consulate, get your immigrant visa, and you enter the U.S. as a green card holder. Then we know it's going to be another 2 years of being a conditional green card holder. And so that's now 4 years. And so let's say 4.5 years or so, you're eligible to get your money back through the EB-5 program because we've filed the I-829 petition. That being said, you're going to be, if you're investing with a regional center group, an EB-5 project handling your money, they're going to have their own contracts that say how long they expect to hold on to your funds. And typically that's going to be about a 5-year hold. So you should expect to be investing your funds for approximately 5 years. That lines up nicely in terms of how long you need to keep your money in the project under your EB-5 timeline. And after 5 years, if you've reached the point of filing that last petition of the process and the funds are available with the project, you can expect to be paid back your money. What are the assurances that you get paid back the funds? Well, under the EB-5 program, there can't be a written-in guarantee, but there can be certain aspects of the structuring of the EB-5 program that can help you. And what I mean by that is, if an EB-5 fund that you invest in invests with another project, invests your money in in a development of a business, that business can guarantee to pay back the EB-5 fund. And then the fund is going to have funds available to pay back your $900,000. So there can also be guarantees to refund your money if, for some reason, your I-526 petition is denied, that first petition of the process. So it really takes a good review of the project documents to understand what might be available to you in terms of assurances that you can get your money back. And I'd be happy to work with you on that. What is the minimum amount of money that can be spent in order to obtain EB-5 visa? The minimum amount of money that can be spent to get your EB-5 green card is $900,000. What is the processing time period? Well, I discussed that a little bit, but let's say you could expect to have your initial green card in anywhere from, let's say, 1.5 years to 2.5 years from now if you started today. And then another 2 years later, you'll be filing the last petition to complete the process. Another question that came in is, can someone whose non-immigrant visa from Nigeria has been refused apply for EB-5? So for instance, let's say you applied for a visitor visa to the US and that was refused. Oftentimes, if we see a refusal for the visitor visa, it's because the consulate thinks that you may not return to your home country. They think that you don't have enough ties or that you're intending on immigrating to the US using your visitor visa, which is a no-no. Well, the good thing is EB-5, it doesn't matter. Of course you're intending on immigrating. So that's not a reason to deny the EB-5 visa. So my answer to you is no, a visitor visa denial does not prevent you from getting an approval through the EB-5 program. Of course, that can depend on why the visitor visa was denied. Fraud or misrepresentation will cause lots of issues. But typically that's not the reason why. It's typically the reason of just looking at the government thinking you might have the intentions to immigrate. And that does not prevent you from moving forward with EB-5. You can certainly do that. And by the way, when I take on a new client, the client will fill out a questionnaire for me, and I'll review that questionnaire to make sure there aren't any red flags, and we'll discuss any issues that I think might be worth discussing based on the information I have in the questionnaire. And once we're all comfortable with knowing that you can indeed immigrate via EB-5, we move forward with your case. Is a business owner considered as an executive, and what are basic requirements? Yes, typically a business owner is considered to be an executive of the business. It's somebody who runs and manages, directs the business, basically the top decision maker. And you want to see a number of employees underneath that owner at a managerial level, and then the manager overseeing the day-to-day operational employees. You also want to see revenue, particularly you'd like to see some profit, and that the business is actively involved with whatever kind of trade or services or production that it says it does. So we show that through bank statements, invoices, contracts. And then we're going to demonstrate that the business is setting up a branch office in the US, and something similar will be occurring in the United States. If it's a new office, we don't need to show that yet because it's a new office and we have 1 year, you have 1 year to grow that new office. If it's an existing business, we're going to show that that is already occurring, meaning it's already a live and operating business with employees and operations. Okay, here's a question. With COVID-19, how can we see a project? Really good question. I like this question a lot. So typically when an investor is looking at EB-5 or maybe teaming up with an E2 offering, they may fly to the US and visit some of them personally. Right now, that's not easy to do, for some impossible. And so there are a lot of things that have been set up virtually that I've been participating in with clients, and those clients have been able to interact with these project managers on a much more personal and face-to-face basis than ever before without having to be in the United States. I've done a number of Zoom meetings and chats through different apps with project developers and my clients to make sure that the client is comfortable with what they're seeing and understanding the project to the best of their ability before they move forward. So, feel free to contact me about that. There are certainly ways to help you get comfortable. I've also personally visited projects in the past. While I'm not an investment advisor, I can certainly tell you whether I have actually seen the project and it does indeed exist. So some clients do take comfort in that. For L1 managers, how much working experience needed in the same company, in the foreign company? Well, there needs to be at least 1 year. So what we look at is whether you have been with that foreign company for at least 1 year in the last 3 years. So maybe you were with that company, a year and a half ago, and you moved on, but now that company wants to hire you and put you in the U.S. office. Well, that qualifies because you were with them at least for at least 1 year for one of the last 3 years. But again, we need to navigate this carefully with the immigration bans in place for certain L1, EB-1C type visas. We can work with you on that and show you how the petition can get approved, and then how we would then set up the visa appointment for you. What is the option for H-1B visa holder? Well, that is one of the visas that is currently subject to the visa bans that was announced this month. And so the H-1B visa holder could do, if you already have the H-1B, you're exempt from the ban. This is for new H-1Bs. So if you already have the H-1B visa, The good thing is you could still do EB-5, for instance. And if you're in the United States, or if you travel to the US using that visa, we can adjust your status from H-1B to EB-5 once the EB-5 petition is approved. And why would you do that? Because EB-5 offers you lawful permanent residency for you and your family, which is the more permanent option or solution for many individuals. The question is E2 available for India? So India does not have a treaty with the United States for E2. However, the solution to that is for an Indian national to acquire a second passport from a country that does have an E2 treaty with the United States, and at the same time make the investment in the US for a new business or an acquiring business to qualify for the E2. And we would coordinate that through your new passport that allows you to get your E2 visa. So that's something to keep in mind. And that's something that's growing in great popularity due to the instant access, the nearly instant access that the E2 visa offers an investor and his or her family members. Can an immigration law firm collaborate with your firm in referring clients to you? As you know, I'm a partner at a law firm in the U.S. We certainly work with strategic partners all around the world to assist with immigration matters. I typically am flying internationally to meet with various local partners in countries around the world, meeting with their own clients to help everyone understand how they may be able to immigrate, particularly through investment opportunities. And so, yes, that is something that I'm certainly interested in doing, and I have a great deal of experience doing, working with local partners in various countries around the world. Does your firm handle other areas of visas like appealing non-immigrant visa decisions? Yes, we're a full service immigration department, and we probably need to look at what the decision was on that denial, and then determine what we think is the right next move to assist you. The next question, will I be able to travel back and forth from the USA while my EB-5 application is pending? Okay, yes. So filing an EB-5 petition can be done for you wherever you are in the world. So what I mean by that is you can be in the US when we file the EB-5 case, you can be in your home country, you can be visiting another country. We file that petition with the Office of the Immigration Office in Washington, D.C. And it doesn't prevent you from traveling in and out of the U.S. That petition does not give you a status in the U.S. It's just processing with the Immigration Office. So if you have another visa, you can indeed travel back and forth. Now, one of the things that we look to is what kind of visa are you using? If it's a visitor visa, for instance, and then we file an EB-5 petition, that EB-5 petition is an immigrant petition. That means, hey, look, I would like to immigrate based off of an approval of this petition. Well, if you're in the meantime traveling back and forth using your visitor visa, there could be some immigrant intent issues that arise that you would want to work with through your immigration attorney to make sure you know how to navigate those issues. I have probably hundreds of clients who have been navigating those types of issues over the years, and would be happy to discuss those kinds of issues with you. Let's see. Yes, I heard new visa categories facing temporary restriction, H-1B, L-1, J-1. Yeah, that's correct. They're facing temporary restriction through the end of the year. That means right now, those three visa categories, if you go to the U.S. Embassy, through the end of the year, they will not be issuing those 3 new visas in your passport. However, you can still get the petition approved through USCIS, which is, so the L1, for instance, this is a petition-based visa. You can't just apply at the US consulate for an L1. First, you have to get a petition approved with the US Immigration Office in the United States, and then you go to the US consulate to get the visa in your passport. That's unique to the L1 and H1B as compared to E2 or E1, for instance. So my point is, you can still file the petition with US Immigration in the US for the L1. But once it's approved, we would need to wait through the end of the year before going and setting up your visa appointment at the consulate to actually get the visa in your passport, which really might not be that much of a delay because COVID-19 has shut down a lot of the consulates. And while we're starting to see some activity from US consulates around the world, I would expect the majority of the activity to pick up, or openings to pick up, in the fall. Someone asks, my son was looking at F1 to investor. Will that have an impact? All right, great question. I work with lots of international students who are going through the EB-5 program. So many individuals will be F1 visa holders or plan to be F1 visa holders, and at the same time are looking to have a long-term solution of becoming a green card holder through the EB-5 program. Well, I would recommend getting the F1 visa. At the same time, we'll prepare the EB-5 petition. Once the F1 visa is stamped in the passport, we can file the I-526 EB-5 petition. And from there, when the investor and / student is in the US, when the EB-5 petition is approved, we can just adjust their status from F1 student visa holder to EB-5 green card. And again, with some immigrant intent issues involved, it's highly important to work with an experienced immigration attorney who can help navigate those kinds of things that come up, but we've certainly done that for a number of clients over the years. Have I helped any South Africans? Absolutely. I very much enjoy working with the individuals from the African continent. I lived in Africa for several years and visited South Africa on multiple occasions. So I have certainly worked with South Africans over the years, and whether it be through a non-immigrant visa or the number of individuals I've worked with for the EB-5 process, it's certainly a viable solution. I worked with probably 15 to 20 South Africans over the last 2 to 3 years, and those cases tend to be pretty straightforward and very much viable as ways to move to the US. Let's see. What US visa categories are Nigerians banned from applying? All right, so just to be clear, Nigeria is not banned from applying for non-immigrant visas any more than any other country. So right now, all countries are currently under a temporary suspension for H-1B, L-1, J-1. So if you apply for a B1 or a visitor visa or an F1 visa or something along those lines, you can technically get that visa. It's the immigrant visas that Nigerians are temporarily banned from obtaining through October. So we expect this ban to expire in October. But that being said, if you have a non-immigrant visa, one of these visas that I just mentioned, and you're in the United States and your EB-5 case is approved, we can just adjust your status from your visa status to EB-5 green card. But again, I would expect this the Nigerian ban on the immigrant side to expire in October. I know that Nigeria has been working very hard to catch up to whatever the U.S. has asked for them to do in terms of increasing their security measures. And so again, I think that relationship between the two countries is very important, and I think we'll see that rectified and the ban lifted for Nigeria. But I'm working with many Nigerian clients filing their EB-5 petitions right now, and once it's approved, we'll be able to navigate in whatever way we can to get them the green card, whether that means they're going to be in the U.S. through another visa, and we just adjust their status to green card, or look into whether that individual can apply for a waiver based on the EB-5 petition and get the immigrant visa in their passport. We have had some success with that. If you're currently in the U.S., will you be expected to leave the U.S. in order to convert from one visa type to EB-5? Very good question. Not necessarily. Some visas have very strict non-immigrant intent, meaning if you come into the U.S. using that visa, such as visitor visa or even the student visa, you need to be careful about what you're doing with that EB-5 case once it's approved. A certain amount of time has passed since you've entered the U.S. You can indeed adjust your status with less worry, less concern about sort of this immigrant intent issue. Other visas, H-1B, L-1, to an extent the E-2 visa, there's really no issue at all with filing to convert to the green card once your EB-5 case is approved. L-1 and H-1B, for instance, have very clear dual intent on immigration, on being an immigrant or not. Meaning you can have the intent to immigrate or not immigrate, it doesn't matter. L1 and H1B have dual intent. So the EB-5 case is approved and you can convert in the United States with no issue. All right, a few more questions. Let me see here. I think these were some of the same questions I talked about. Traveling back and forth while the EB-5 is pending. What are the options for H-1B visa holder? Again, as an H-1B visa holder, you can still, if you have the means, you can still move forward with your EB-5 petition, and once approved, adjust status in the United States from H-1B to the EB-5 green card. That gives you a lot of freedom and flexibility, meaning you're no longer tied to that H-1B employer once the EB-5 case is approved. And right now, for most countries around the world, you're going to be immediately available to adjust status from your visa to your green card under the EB-5 program. The only two countries right now that are backlogged are China and Vietnam. The rest of the countries, including India, are current. So that means that EB-5 is and remains to be one of the fastest ways to wind up as a green card holder. And I encourage you to look into it further if that's something that you have the financial means to do. All right. I'm just checking to see if we've got any more questions. I think that's it. And I believe that's our time for today. So thank you again for tuning in. I hope you found this to be helpful. And please feel free to contact me if this is something you're interested in doing. Bye-bye.